to the Infinity Bros podcast, the only podcast that's perfectly balanced as all things should be. My name is Isaac Edlin. I am your host tonight, and I have one other very special Infinity Bro with me. It is the tinfoil hat distributor of the Infinity Bros universe. It is Mark Jones.
I am honored to be the tinfoil version of one of the bros.
We need somebody to dole out the conspiracy theories on the pod, so you're the guy.
So I would say so the podcast I listen to that I reference into our group chat a lot isn't necessarily, it's not a conspiracy podcast. It's just it's called the Confessionals podcast.
Okay.
And the host there, like his whole thing is he brings people in just tell their supernatural stories, where there are some people that come on that talk about conspiracies. I just find that interesting, where it's just like an open forum to be like, hey, yeah, you have a ghost story? Come on down, tell it to us.
Come on down.
That podcast is like blown up since I first started listening to it. So, but
we'd have to have a Infinity Bros podcast episode about that. Just invite whoever the heck wants to come on to talk about whatever they want.
They've branched out to a few other podcasts with like people that are like in their circles, where one literally is, I forget, it's called like the rabbit hole or whatever, where the guy literally just talks about conspiracy theories, but like in the most layman's terms, like, here, you've heard this conspiracy, I'm going to lay it out for you. And just like, I find that wonderful, where it's like, oh yeah,
that's right. I was going to say that would be very helpful for me, because like I know of a lot of conspiracies, but I don't dive deep into the rabbit hole like you or other people do. So having somebody to break those down for me would be wonderful.
Like Project Blue Book 101. That's basically what you're like. Project Blue Book for Dummies is basically what the guys do.
For dummies.
Awesome.
Yep. That's what I need. Exactly. So, but anyways, it's been a pleasure chatting with Mark on the Patreon exclusive version of this episode. So you can check that out in the show notes, or you can go to patreon.com/theinfinitybros.
Hot breaking news.
Exclusive hot breaking news. Yes, you are going to want to hear this one, folks. Good stuff. Anyways, we have a couple things to talk about, Mark. I don't want to go too deep into it,
Yeah.
Get a conspiracy theory about the Infinity Bros podcast going or anything like that. But we've got a big thing that we're talking about, the Acolyte season finale. Well, I guess I should say finale as of right now. They haven't announced season 2. We're going to focus on episodes 7 and 8 a little bit, and then do kind of a season recap. And also, I'm going to talk about Twisters a little bit, because I just got back from watching that. So I'll give a little bit of a non-spoiler review. But if you have not listened to the Infinity Bros podcast before, make sure you go to theinfinitybros.com to check out all of our cool stuff that we've got. Previous podcast episodes, got some blog posts on the Daily Snap, some reviews. Robbie is streaming on Drip a couple times a week, dripping and shipping those magic cards.
Making his fortune.
Yeah, making his fortune, exactly.
You've all seen the pool. That's strictly from drip money.
That's a direct result of Robbie buying more magic cards. Basically, getting into magic all of a sudden catapulted him into the elite status of the economy here.
Catapulted even the Infinity Bros social media.
There you go. He's dragging us along with him.
Yeah, he lets us do this.
Thank you, Robbie, for allowing us to ride your coattails.
Yeah.
Anyways, so a lot of cool things to check out at theinfinitybros.com. We also have a special rating system that we use on the Infinity Bros podcast.
Here on the Infinity Bros podcast, everything is ranked from a 0 to 6 point scale. 0 meaning horrible, and 6 meaning absolutely excellent. If all of the Infinity Bros rank something a 6, it gets an infinity step.
So if you hear us refer to a number in rating these things, that's what it's like. We'll give a little bit of a spoiler warning when we come up to the Acolyte, but like I said, I'm going to talk about Twisters a little bit before, because my wife Holly is a big Twister fan. She loves that movie, watched it all the time growing up. I personally never watched it until I started dating her and she showed me that movie. Rewatched it this week in preparation for going to see Twisters. And Twister is an all-time classic. Man, I still get chills watching that movie. The disaster portion of it, like, came out in 1996. Like, it's pretty old. It's almost 30 years old. And the CGI generally holds up. There's a couple moments in there they're like, oh, okay, that was kind of wonky. But for 30 years old, it's solid. It's such a good movie. And there are like 2 or 3 scenes in that movie that I still get like goosebumps from just how chilling and eerie the scenes are in that. So we were very excited to go and see Twisters tonight. They had early, like, advanced showing at one of the theaters not too far from our house. So we're like, yeah, we got to go check this out. And it was solid. Mark, how do you feel about all of these, like, sequels and, like, reboots, I guess you could say, that all these companies are coming out with? Like, when you hear that Twister, a movie from 1996, is getting a sequel, what is your initial reaction to something like that?
Well, like, Twisters isn't a reboot. It's
more of like a
sequel.
spiritual sequel type of thing. Like, it wasn't a
like,
direct sequel.
See, I'm more of a fan of, like, what you said, like a revival. Like, I just think of the first one that I feel like really was big was Roseanne, when they did the revival, where it's like, no, it's the same story. We're just telling it now 20 years later. I like that versus more of like a reboot, where I think a reboot can really be, you have like you have a lot going against you to stay true to the stuff, or even like that 90s show where it's like, it's not a true, it's sort of a revival, but like now in a different, it's like in the same world but telling a different story.
And I think that's honestly what Twisters was. So what I was kind of worried about was, like, they were just gonna that's what I was just gonna say, that I was kind of worried that they were gonna, like, do something like, oh, this is the daughter of this person,
gotcha.
And that was like one of the main characters, and I was like, ugh, like, that would be kind of on the nose and a little annoying to me. But they didn't do any of that, so I thought it's definitely like a spiritual sequel. They do reference Twister one time in the movie, and it was a pretty cool reference. So I was like,
this isn't totally a cool Twister. These are Twisters.
They did have a couple moments that were like a little bit on the nose, and I was like, I could have done without that. It's hard coming into a movie too, because after rewatching Twister, I was like, that movie to me is a 6 out of 6. Like, very solid, like, cinematic masterpiece that is up in my probably all-time like top 10 or 15 or something like that. So I didn't expect this one to hit that level. I wasn't expecting a, movie of the decade type of thing. And it wasn't, but it was a solid, like, summer blockbuster. It just was really fun. It was like, Glenn Powell is one of the main characters. Dude is just great in everything right now. So yeah, all the acting was great. Did enough of a job of separating itself from Twister. I mean, if we're being real about it, it was like they took the same formula from Twister, which, it was a good formula. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it, I guess. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't super original. It was pretty predictable, but it was a lot of fun. And they had some pretty intense, like, disaster tornado scenes, which, I mean, that's what we expected coming into it. So overall, very solid, very good. I'd say it has a chance to crack my top 6 for 2024 movies. So I'm going to give it a 5 out of 6. So definitely worth going to see if you're a big Twister fan, or if you're just looking for a fun movie to see, like, fun summer blockbuster. Definitely fits that category. There you go. It's my review of Twisters, I should say. Both of them. You
could have given like the most raving 6 out of 6 review ever, and I'm still not gonna go see that movie. I have like a huge fear of tornadoes, so like,
interesting.
I have vivid memories watching Twister on VHS at my grandparents' house in like 98 or 99. So like, 7 to 9 year old Mark's watching this.
Did Twister give you that fear?
Probably. I just feel like it's always been there.
Right.
Like anytime I see like even now as an adult man, see that, oh, you're in a tornado watch or tornado warning. I'm like, ooh, let's I'm gonna be watching my phone now. I get to do that at least, see what the radar looks
right.
like.
Yeah,
So.
and I mean, luckily we're up here in Minnesota. We just generally don't get that many tornadoes. But man, watching both of those movies where they're in, Tornado Alley, Oklahoma or Kansas, that area, it's like they have tornadoes all the time.
Just to let you know,
Like,
Isaac, we're at the very top of Tornado Alley. We are technically in Tornado Alley.
Yeah, well,
Trust me.
even so, it's pretty rare that we get them up here. They're actually going down to Tracy, my sister-in-law or my brother-in-law. His dad lives there, and we went to visit one time. We went through a little tiny town by Marshall, which I don't know, you probably know that area
there are
a little
many.
bit more.
There are quite a few
there's
tiny
a little
towns.
one, but it was just there's still, they had a big tornado like late 90s there, and they still they didn't clean up a lot of the wreckage, so there's just an area outside of town that there was like a big warehouse that's just like totally destroyed, and it just sits there. And I was like, dang, that's pretty cool. I mean, cool and like a little creepy to like see the destruction of a real tornado and be like, dang, like kind of wild.
Well, you remember May of 22 in Minnesota from like our farm, or the farm that we lived at up to my parents-in-law's. Like there was a huge
you
wind
guys had
tornado
some
storm
trees that
we had all of the trees fall down. We had like 50 plus trees fall down at the farm.
Woof, yikes.
Yeah. And luckily the house didn't get
like damaged or anything.
Mm-hmm.
Scary. One time when I was probably in high school, so we were all hanging out in our basement watching a movie like we did so many times before. Very windy, and we're just like, didn't really pay attention to it or whatever. And all of a sudden, we just heard this sound, like it sounded like a train was passing through our yard.
Mm-hmm.
And we were all just like, what was that? Like, what the heck? We ran upstairs, and the windows were literally like bulging in from the wind that was going on outside. And we all like looked at that and we're like, we probably should go back downstairs and stay down there for a little bit. The next morning we go outside, and one of our largest trees on our property just was down, like cut in half, destroyed. And it was just like, and that tree was probably 50 feet from our house, and luckily did not fall in the direction of our house, because that would have done a ton of damage. But it was kind of a scary feeling being like, wow, this is like real. It's like happening right now.
Yeah, natural disasters. No yoke.
Scary stuff. But Twisters was solid. I don't think it was, honestly, Twisters was not as scary as Twister, I don't think. I have the same
I'll take your word
thought about Twister. It's scary. Like, it's legit scary movie, honestly. Like the natural disaster portions, like the 2-3 scenes of the actual tornadoes that they're in, it's freaky.
Well, it's freaky to the sense where, in my mind, it's like that actually can happen.
Right. It's not like you're watching
Jason
like
Voorhees
a horror movie or sci-fi. You're right.
Going to show up and camp Crystal Lake and take me into the lake. That ain't gonna happen.
Yeah, right.
I say that, and I'm going to Wisconsin, and that's gonna happen.
That's gonna happen. Well,
some like monster demon's gonna pull me down. Joey Castoli's gonna try to grab me with his good arm.
Oh gosh, Twisters, solid. If you're looking for a fun summer blockbuster, go check it out. All right, Mark, let's dive into what you're here for. It's the Acolyte.
I'm here.
You're here, and this is a big deal that Mark is here right now. It is 11:30 p.m. on a weeknight,
Central Time.
You are here at 11 p.m. Usually you're in bed sleeping by now.
Yeah.
You made the sacrifice to hang out with me and talk about the Acolytes.
No one suffers like I suffer.
Big suffering vibes from Mark over here. Just
I can hear
making big sacrifices to be
sense in the future. People listening to this and be like, they're like, what a B word.
Oh man. Well, I'm thankful you're here with me. So,
and I'll be up at like 5:30. That's what's fun. So it don't matter.
All right, good. Here is your official spoiler warning for the Acolyte.
This is
Prepare yourself.
an Infinity Bros.
Prepare yourself.
Spoiler warning.
All right, Mark. So we've reviewed episodes 1 through 6 on previous episodes of the Infinity Bros podcast. You can go check that out on our feed. Episodes 200, 201, and 202 all have our previous reviews of the Acolyte episodes 1 through 6. So we could talk about 7 and 8 a little bit, and then you could just talk about your season stuff. Let's start with 7 for now, because I think it's worth talking about. This is, you mentioned it in our group chat that you were not a big fan of this one. So I want to get your perspective. But first, I'm going to introduce this a little bit. So, episode 3 was probably one of the more controversial episodes in the season because it flashed back to May and Osha's origin. We definitely were fed a perspective of somebody's that we didn't know. I feel like we kind of knew it was Osha's perspective at the time, but they didn't give a whole lot of clues as to that at the time. Mm-hmm. It just was, to me, episode 3 was odd timing because we're finally getting the story going, and then all of a sudden they do this whole flashback episode. It just threw everything off, in my opinion. We kind of knew they were going to come back to that flashback and fill in the blanks a little bit, and they finally get back to it in episode 7. So episode 7 kind of shows the whole story as opposed to just Osha's limited perspective of what happened. So we find out that Sol literally killed Mother Anasea. We find out that May did not just die. Obviously we knew that because the rest of the story has May in it, but we see what happened to May.
We don't really know what happened to May until the last episode.
True.
It's oh crap, okay. We got to tell you what happened there.
We know she made it out, but anyways, we get to see one of the most wild parts of that episode that actually was sick was possessed Kelnaka going ham on Torben and Sol. I was like, holy crap. Rampaging Jedi Wookiee? Yes, this is what I'm watching this show for. So that part was sick. And then, I don't know, man. To me, episode 7 raised more questions than answers that we got for the rest of the show.
Yeah,
what did you think of episode 7?
Episode 7 just felt like, hey, we need to fill an episode. Let's just rehash everything. But let's do it from Sol's point of view. But we're kind of going to go over everything we already saw in episode 3. But we need to fill another episode, and this is all we got. That's what it felt like to me. Oh, we'll throw a Wookiee possession fight into it, which was pretty good. But the whole premise of their secret is they thought the witches were going to sacrifice these children, and the moment they intervene and the mom turns into a black mist, Sol reacts and stabs her because he's thinking that she's going to kill Osha. And then apparently that's enough to be yep, that's a dark secret. And then so that happened. And that just kind of, that freaking killed it for me, where it's this is the secret. This is literally, they were here under the impression. And yes, it's a mistake, sure. But at the end of the day, it's we didn't, she didn't have to be so mysterious. She could have been Osha can go with. She could have yelled that any time before turning into black mist. Whatever.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. If I think you, Isaac, are gonna sacrifice a bunch of children, and me and Max are there with lightsabers, and you turn into black mist, I'm stabbing you. I'm not thinking twice about it. I am reacting.
I get that. That makes sense. But the thing about the whole situation was the black mist thing was so out of the blue, just out of nowhere.
And he reacts like he probably any other Jedi would have reacted.
Right, yeah, and that makes sense how he reacts. That's the stabbing her is not the crazy part, but it just and then they never go back to it and explain what the heck the black mist is.
And that's what I hated going into the next episode. Is they never gave context to the story. Like, you're telling me
Right.
Soul is not like, okay, here, I'm going to lay it out for you. I'm going to tell you the whole story. Here's what led up to this. Not just like, oopsie my bad. I killed the mom.
Oops. Yeah, right.
Not like, hey,
Just
we thought they were going to kill you.
Yeah.
We saw, and then, hey, one of them is like possessing people and like taking over Jedi. So it's like, it's a little wacky, little crazy scenario happening. Oopsies.
Yeah. So many things about that episode, just like, and granted, okay, I'm gonna push back on you a little bit. So I kind of like how they did the parallels to episode 3 and how they're like going back and filling in the blanks, but telling the same story. I kind of like that, but again,
it could have been way shorter.
Overall,
they could have done it in like 5-10 minutes. I think
they could have done that, or if you spent actually time on the story instead of 20 minutes per episode, you could have fully explained everything.
Yeah.
And, made a way better episode.
Could have done 2 more episodes.
That's the root of like every single problem with this series is it comes down to they trying to cram all this crap into 20-minute episodes and they just can't tell a good story.
And it just feels like, then it's like to us where it's like, we want this to be good. I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I'm still like, and at the end of the day, and we'll probably get into it a little later, I want this story to continue. I need to see where this is going. I'm invested that way. Even though how badly I felt about this season, I still want more. Because I'm just in the ice cold for Star Wars. So
you're just a Star Wars shill.
I was a Last Jedi. Rise of Skywalker. I was an apologist, or I wouldn't say an apologist. I was a supporter of those. Mm-hmm. I love those. This is the only time I've ever been like, man, I hate to be wrong because a lot of people say if I'm wrong, I'm like, I'm something bad. I'm can't have an opinion that I don't like this because other people who are way worse fans say awful things.
Yeah.
But I mean, yes.
And I think me and you and Zane and Jarrett, all the guys on the Infinity Bros podcast that are big Star Wars guys, we're all in Star Wars for Star Wars. So like, we're going to watch everything regardless of it's good, bad, like doesn't matter. We're going to watch it.
Yeah. We're going to consume it. We're going to eat it. Like, even if it's garbage, we're going to eat it.
We're going to consume it. Exactly. So in the end, it's like, yeah, sure. Like whatever. I mean, it wasn't my favorite. Would I rewatch this again? Probably not. But at the end of the day, it's still Star Wars. It's still fun. To me anyways. I don't know if this changed your perspective of Star Wars. Like there's a lot of people out there that are like, I'm not watching Star Wars ever again, blah, blah, blah. It's
those
like,
people have been out here since the sequel trilogies or the prequel trilogies. And as youth, I remember hearing that from like older fans then. Right, that like, I'm never going to watch, anything else because these are bad. And now we've come full circle. Where our generation has like the loudest voice, and those are like the best ones. The prequels are better than the originals.
Well, me and you were like prime prequels. Like we grew up in the prequel era, and
opening
like that was our thing. We love the prequels. We think they're great.
All 3 of them. I went to the opening weekend for all 3. So
so like you said, it's come full circle, and now we're at this area where there might be new, younger kids, like teenagers watching this for the first time being like, Star Wars is amazing.
Yeah. Or even the sequel trilogy. That could be their start where they
absolutely. So, it is what it is. Star Wars is Star Wars.
Or the Mandalorian could have been their first introduction into the Star Wars.
I hope so. I hope Mandalorian was.
Or Clone Wars, the cartoon, the animation. Like,
yeah, true. But anyways, so all that to say, like, no matter how much bad stuff we say about this show, I mean, we're still going to be consuming all of it anyways.
I probably would have given episode 7 probably a 2 out of 6. Like it did not hit for me. Like it was just, it really felt like, hey, someone throw up the LeBron highlights and just put a Wookiee fight in it. The people will be fine with that. That's what it really felt to me.
But the Wookiee highlight is that sweet slam dunk that everybody is like plastered all over everything. So like, that's what people watch it for. The rest of it's just like, meh.
But then he didn't give us the Wookiee fight, before he died. But whatever.
Yeah, right. But okay, so back to episode 7. There are a couple things I wanted to mention before we move on to 8. Torben just is like this Padawan who's like, I want to go back home to Coruscant.
And then becomes a master in 6 years.
Yeah, that's pretty insane. And he, like, you watch him as a Padawan, like, dude's got some lightsaber skills. So, like, chances are he's been a Padawan for a while, and he's maybe close.
All I can say on this, what I'm going to touch on that, if Torben truly exists, if we're in the same universe, and Anakin didn't go back and see, hey, why this Torben guy become a Padawan, was then in like 6 years later became a master, and you're telling me I can't have the rank as master? Like,
yeah. Yeah. They were holding him back, man. I'm telling you. But the funniest thing about that whole thing is that when he's on his like screen or whatever, and he figures out that May and Osha are basically the same person, like they have the same M count. They don't say midichlorians. Why do they not want to say midichlorians anymore? I don't get that.
I don't know. Did millennials or Gen Zers write this where you just gotta shorten everything up? Like, is that what happened?
Maybe it's like they're just doing it to be cool. Yeah, maybe. Anyways, but he finds out that they're like the same person, and then immediately just leaves to go get them. That part I just like laughed out loud at. Like, what? What are you going to do? There's a coven of 50 witches up there. Like, you're just going to go.
And that's a moment to me where it's just like, I think it's like, I would love for someone to like explain the thought process of like the writing, why that's okay. Right. Because like to me, it's like, well, we kind of got that he doesn't want to be there anymore. But like, he's also, it seems a little timid. So it's not like he's willing to go out of his way to put himself in danger. So why is he doing that in this situation?
Yeah. Why is he all of a sudden make that snap decision of like, oh, I've got to go do something, and just bolts on his speeder nonetheless, and, like without
knowing what happened to him prior when he was there with the other Jedi.
Exactly.
So, that's where people can be like, well, there's the sign where it's like that, that's just bad writing, where it's like maybe
bad writing that, like, honestly, you keep this whole plot though, and you just add more details, add more like build up to a lot of these moments. And it's fine. Like,
a bit better executed. And it's like, this is where I've watched. I think we've talked about shows like this enough times. We've watched enough shows, I think collectively, where I've come to the point where like I can't blame actors. It's literally comes down to the writing and script. Like that's what really, because you're gonna get good actors. Good actresses.
Right. We got good at Master Soul, or Lee Jung-jae as Master Soul. He was fantastic. I loved him throughout this whole series.
In my opinion, I wouldn't say anyone did a bad acting job. In my opinion,
right?
It's just like the story and some of the dialogue just did not flow right like other shows have.
One thing I was also going to mention about this episode is getting more Carrie-Anne Moss as Master Indara was also great. I loved her, and it was kind of like, like when we in episode 1 when we got that cool fight and then she just gets killed, it was like, I thought she was going to be in this series, not just like a flash in a pan type of thing. But the fact that we get a lot of her in this episode, that was cool. I enjoyed her. Wish we could see more, but here we are. The last part of that episode is her deciding that they're going to cover up the whole they just murdered 50 witches thing. That was kind of another wild thing to me. Number one, and this is kind of a forgivable thing.
That's the one thing my beautiful wife Kelly and I were talking about. Did they kill, did the witches actually die, the ones that were chanting?
Right. That's a good question. They don't show the bodies when they go back there.
And we don't see, did we see the other one die? The one that looks like the one with the
Coral?
horns?
Yeah. Coral, we did not see die. She's not in the room with the other witches chanting either. So she just vanishes.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
See her again.
Where did they all go? Because that would have been my first thing if we got back to Brendock at the last episode. It's like, I'm going to that area. I'd be like, okay, where are all the skeletons?
Right. Well, okay, so just look, if we're looking at it for all the skeletons, if we're looking at it from the Jedi's perspective, all right? So they fight Kelnaka, Carrie Ann Moss severs this like whatever force possession connection thing. She you could see it in that episode. She knows that there's something that happened, right? Like
what are they called?
she knows something happened.
Like virgins or whatever.
Right. Yeah. So and then they run through that room and they're all laying on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you don't know if Soul thinks they're dead or not because he just literally drags Osha back to the ship. So you can't really tell if he thinks they're dead or if he doesn't, one way or another. But either way, I mean, they know they did something that they weren't supposed to, and they don't go back to rescue the witches. So either way, they leave them to die. So the fact that they cover that up is
now see that to me is more of an atrocity than the reaction to the mom turning into the mist and then reacting as like a defense.
Right, because that's like you said, that's kind of a natural reaction. That's
like if you can sense those people are alive and buildings burning, that's the bad thing.
That's the bad thing. So they go back, they cover it up, blah blah blah. All then the rest of the story happens, in present time and whatever. But we get to episode 8, and May is basically trying to get Osha to see that they covered this all up. That was one thing about episode 8, the finale, that I was just like, are we really like Soul held on for so long, and then at the very final last second he finally admits it. Like, why were you holding on to this for so long, dude? You could have told her at any point during this season.
Yeah, and like to not again back to like you don't give any context. The way he says it makes it just sound like he's a cold-hearted killer, where it's just like
right.
That's not the case.
Right. Yeah, it's not. Yeah, they didn't explain the story. Man,
and coming back to this, what's the bad guy's name again? I want to say Jason because he's in the good place, but
come here.
So it's like to me when Osha is on that planet with him and he's taken a nudie swim and comes out, is that when she turned? When she saw full Sith? She's like, yep.
I guess. Dark side you can't really definitively say that it's not when she turns. So
because there was so much, as my beautiful wife Kelly said. Are we supposed to get a lot of feeling that there's sexual tension here? Is literally what she said. And I don't think she's wrong.
That's a great question. That's a great question.
Then they do a weird handhold.
The very last scene, right? They hold hands, and you're just like, wait, what? Oh, okay. I guess they like each other now.
And who's the master? Well, we do get that. We do get that.
Yes. Okay.
At the end of the episode,
that's
like
something.
I always forget the green girl's name or green whatever alien. Like she must have been his master.
Venestra, right.
Yeah. But then it's like, well, he had to turn somehow, so like there has to be someone else.
Right. Well, that's another interesting part of the finale that actually makes me intrigued for season 2, which has not been confirmed. But Venestra
on the High Council? Like, is she a High Council member?
It seems like it, because when she comes to, we get a cameo of Master Yoda. She comes to him pretty freely. It's not like I don't know. I guess I don't know what it's like back in the High Republic days of like the High Council is like so untouchable that you can't just like go walk up to him and like.
Because that's what I was bringing up to Kelly, because we watch all the episodes together, where I was like, I really felt in the beginning where she wasn't part of the High Council. Like she was like in a council that's like or a group whatever before the High Council. So I might be wrong there. But like the whole scene when the senator came to him or came to her, Venstra, to like basically, hey, if you don't figure stuff out, I'm gonna like tattle on you, blah blah blah. I'm thinking like, why is the senator going to her and not like Yoda or someone with like higher power? Or at this point, like, how is this not been disclosed at all? But then at the end of the day, she like sells out Soul without, again, no context. Just as like, yep,
no context.
Like, why are you covering this up? Why are you covering up that there's a Sith or a bad person that killed a bunch of Jedi?
Yeah.
And now there's 2 probably.
No sense. And she, like, you see in the finale that she goes to Brendok, she finds Soul dead. she obviously knows that Soul didn't kill himself. Like,
Yeah,
you
'cause
can
she can
see
sense
that
it.
through the show, right?
Yeah.
But she goes to the council and the whatever, the Senate, the senator people that are there in the end,
Mhm.
like, sells that Soul killed everybody, that she's covering this up. And she also had, we got that little clip that you mentioned. She knows that Khmer is alive, and apparently he was her Padawan or something at some point. So she is covering something up as well. She probably knows about Brendock back in the day, right? Like, I'm assuming at this point, because she's covering up something about Khmer as well. But
so either, like, this is my thought, either she was privy to the whole situation, like someone, like one of the four told her, or her ability is able to like read minds, but like he'd be dead, so or she could have done that when he was alive. But anyways, so like they have all those details, and but
I love that part though, when they sense each other, and then he like puts his helmet back on. He's like, oh crap.
God.
Oops.
Okay, coming back to that. So I will say this about the last episode in this season. That fight scene was top notch. I thought, I was like, where were all these fight scenes? I mean, I did like the forest fight scene.
Yeah, we had great fight choreography in this whole season.
I think
the problem was the story. The story just was not great throughout.
Because I would give that fight between them 6 out of 6. Between Soul and already, like, I'm so bad with names.
Really?
Shows.
You think that fight was better? To me, the Kelnaka one and the one in episode 5 with Khmer taking out all of the Jedi.
No, I would say Khmer and Soul episode 8 fight is the top if we had to rank them. Yeah.
All right. I mean, it was solid. Like I said, I think the fight choreography has been great this whole season, which is highlight of this show, honestly, because going back to the sequels, I mean, we got some good emotional lightsaber fights in the sequels between like Kylo and Rey, and stuff like that. But I mean, the sword fighting is nowhere near like the level of the prequels with the Duel of the Fates and Anakin and Obi-Wan, Yoda and Count Dooku, and all those other sweet fights.
So I think it was a reel, or maybe it was on YouTube. I saw someone that was like kind of complaining about like, oh yeah, people say the fights in the sequel trilogy is good, and then showed like the Phantom Menace stuff. It's like, you gotta know this, back to context. Context is king.
Right. Context, exactly.
Is like the first Force Awakens, the lightsaber battles between Finn, who's never been trained in a lightsaber.
Never held a lightsaber before.
Yeah. And then the second one, we get some training where it's like Kylo clearly is trained in how to duel with the lightsaber. Right. And then the 3, it's like, okay, now Rey's had some training, blah, blah, blah. Where it's like Dueling Fates, episode 1, all those Jedi have been training for a very long time, and Darth Maul how to battle the lightsaber.
Right.
And that's and going back, that's what made, for me, in my opinion, this series good with lightsaber battles, because we're in a world where all these Jedi have been trained. Right. And that's what the people want. We want good lightsaber fights.
Yeah, exactly. We got good lightsaber fights, and you're right though. The context is and those fights, they're emotional scenes too. Yeah. Like, they work in the context of the movie. It's not like they're just bad fights and like they're not fun to watch. Like, there's still great emotional scenes in those sequel movies, but like obviously when you're comparing fight choreography, they're not comparable really to the prequels or in this series as well.
And one thing that would be a knock with the fight though would be his helmet. The material it's made out of is supposed to stop his lightsaber, which it never does. So, and which it did in episode 5, the one where he.
Well, there was that one part where, which I thought was one of the coolest parts of this fight between Soul and Khmer, was where Soul was like trying to push his lightsaber towards Khmer to short out Khmer's lightsaber on his own helmet, and then he switched it and was pulling it towards his helmet. That was like, oh, that was cool. That was a sweet move.
I did like that. That was a little detail when the lightsabers are really like on each other and like the molten is like hitting his mask.
Right.
That's the details I love. So yes, I would give this show, like, that's what I'm saying. They did a great job, and I would never say the show didn't look good, like appealing, like the cinematography and like the costume design, everything looks on point.
Right.
So
yeah, everything looks
so
great.
I don't want to be
Yeah,
like
you're
crapping all over this, but man, this story did not help at all.
Yeah. Well, and the story, it didn't get, that was my thing, was like, I said halfway through the season, like, I think if they absolutely nail the last episode or the last two episodes, that could elevate this whole show. Like, it could make this show a lot better. But every single episode just was disappointing, like one after the other. And the finale was pretty much the same. Like, they answered a few things, brought up more questions, and just ultimately just did not feel like a satisfying finale.
And Osha turns, which her grabbing the Soul's lightsaber was a pretty cool sequence.
Okay, that was cool. The bleeding of the kyber crystal, right?
Yeah. However, I still think that's also a poor telling. It's just like right there, she's just all of a sudden I mean, I get the whole dark side takes over, kills, but then Then we get the scene where it's like, hey, I'm gonna join him, but we're gonna make you forget plot device.
It happens so freaking fast. It's like, wait a minute. Like, Osha, this whole series has been like holding out and like, oh no, Jedi are good, like the light side. And then in a instant, she's like, oh no, kill Soul. I'm all of a sudden a Sith.
Like she didn't want to hear any like the details about it, where it's like she was totally reacted right to it, which again, going back to you're in the moment, you're just gonna kill him, versus like Soul didn't turn into a black mist monster. She killed him out of vengeance.
Yeah, right. And it goes back to like, if you just had more time, if you had another 20 or 30 minutes in this episode and just made that moment more impactful by having the dialogue between Soul and May, then maybe it makes sense. But as it sits, it just it doesn't make sense, man. Like, and then all of a sudden May also is like, oh, you know what? I'm good now. Like, I don't have all this vengeance in my heart.
Me a brain dead zombie. That's what I need.
Just is like, just totally erase my whole memory. And I'll get caught by the Jedi. That was another thing, was like, they just decide that only two of them can leave the planet, apparently, and don't say anything about that. They're just like, oh, hey, you want to stay here and get caught by the Jedi? Okay, cool.
Because she could have ran this back to Soul's ship and just
right,
gone somewhere. I mean, the Jedi would have hunted her, but like, you know,
right.
Could have figured it out.
The shining part of this episode is Basil again. Love Basil. He's just the best part of this series. So protect Basil at all costs. That's
we'll get a Basil series.
Basil spinoff.
Captain Kennedy will call us up and be like, all right, guys, prove us wrong. Here's Basil. And we'd be like, what the hell are we supposed to do with this?
Whatever we want.
Basil does a podcast.
The Basil podcast. Wow. That would be amazing. I'm all in. Yeah, I don't know, man. There's a lot of things about this final episode that just... They what?
They killed Tord. Right? Wasn't that guy's name?
Yord?
The dude with the dreadlocks. Or whatever.
Oh, okay. Yord.
There you go. I said
Tord. Way back. Yeah, way back. Tord.
Could you, like, that would be the one... I think that'd be so fun, is just making up these names. There's got to be... I'm sure there's some master book in the Star Wars like production
sidebar
that, like,
on
here's
that.
how you
So
do names.
I heard this story about George R.R. Martin. Apparently, in one of his books, he has a whole family that is named after the Muppets.
Interesting.
Like, they're all Muppet names. I was like, I kind of respect that because that's hilarious, but also I just don't like George R.R. Martin, so I don't know how I feel about that.
I just feel like we like give Isaac the naming, the name characters, and they're all just like based off of like Lord of the Rings.
All of Nicolas Cage's
man, even better. Yes, there you go. One of the two, either one.
Memphis Reigns is the next Jedi on the list.
Ghost Rider.
Ghost Rider. Johnny Blaze.
He didn't even try.
Oh, that'd be great. But yeah, I mean, the sudden flip between both May and Osha, and man, this is throughout this series too. I just feel like it's been so inconsistent in what characters they're focusing on, because they want us to believe that May and Osha are so important, but I didn't feel that way throughout this whole series until this episode. I didn't care about May and Osha until this episode. Like, if you want to make them important, you like got to spend more time on them in the previous episodes. And that's why I think the impact in this episode just isn't there for me anyways, too. So I don't know, man. They want you to focus on May and Osha, but the other characters like Soul, Kamir, and, you know, like the little group or whatever of them, like Torben, and
they had more charisma
Dara
than May.
They had more charisma. They're more interesting characters. Like everybody, including me and Zane, who's been reviewing all these with me, Master Soul, like, I love the dude throughout the series. And then all of a sudden, this episode, he finally like reveals the crap that he did. And you're like, oh, the one guy that I liked.
and that back to, you know, there are some good storytelling, because, you know, Osha was wearing all black, May was wearing all white, so it's foretelling that, you know, Osha was going to turn to the dark side, like it was going to happen, like it was meant to be, like the Force was telling us something.
Yeah, and then we get that focus shift to Kamir in episodes like 4 and 5 when we finally like learn about him, and then he just like fades off. Like even in this finale, I don't think he wasn't that important. Like,
they literally get to an entrance, and then he fades. He did whatever. He probably turned into black mist and found his way in there.
Now everybody's just learning this black mist power now.
I am disappointed that like we didn't get like, oh yeah, you know what? One of the witches is still alive. That's what's been
right.
Or we didn't get like how where May, like, it's like, oh yeah, she fell and then just wound up in like a tube. That like was
right,
like like it did water garbage. I don't know.
There was a lot of convenient storytelling.
Yeah,
that just was like,
and that I feel like to me is lazy storytelling.
Right,
and I get there needs to be some plot devices, like the, you know, I don't know how you do better, like how you make it better to like, hey, we're gonna erase your memory, just make you a shell of yourself, so when the Jedi take you, it's like we can get off and do whatever, but to just conveniently land into a tube and survive, but then also not like, unless their whole plan is like, we want a season 2 and then we'll tell this stuff. Then it's like, because I want to know, how did she get off the planet? Who finds her? Like,
right. What it comes down to is Disney needs to stop limiting these creators to this 6 to 8 episode, 20-minute episode format. Like, we need to get rid of that. Let them tell the stories they want, and, you know, give them a little leeway with the length of the episodes, the length of the show. Because, like, we just got The Bear, and I believe that one's 10 episodes. The episodes range from like 30 minutes to over an hour.
But okay, I get what you're saying. I love it. I want longer episodes of this stuff. But like, knowing, which I find outrageous, how much this show cost to like its overall visual is like, I don't know where the money's going. It just feels like I said this in the group, they're clearly laundering money somewhere. Money's being laundered, or someone's being very overpaid.
Right.
Where it's like, yeah, like what is the cost analysis to do 2 more episodes, or make it even still stick with 8 episodes, but do an extra 20-30 minutes per episode, versus like, because to me, this very much felt like you could have totally done a great job doing a movie that's like 2 hours, but they're doing the show, so then you subscribe to Disney Plus. That's what we're getting. We're getting shows on Disney Plus to keep you subscribing to Disney Plus.
Yeah, which is unfortunate. But I mean, that's the market that we're in right now. Like, that's what they're trying to do, is keep you subscribed. So, and some of that stuff works. Like, I've enjoyed a lot of the Marvel shows and a lot of the Star Wars shows too. But this is just one of those shows that just didn't work. Didn't work for me.
And like, people have been like, I've read somewhere, someone made a comment about like, oh, you know, people just crap on, you know, making up new characters, you know, it's just always off to a bad rap. And it's like, look at The Mandalorian. those were all brand new characters, and that
Yeah.
killed it. So and what they did there is great storytelling, a good
What do you
story,
know?
good writing, and all of a sudden it's good.
Or Andor.
Yeah,
We got
Andor's
a
another
show.
crazy one.
We got a show in
That's a
Andor that
sleeper.
doesn't have any Jedi, doesn't have any Force sensitive anything. So, I mean, on the surface, you look at that synopsis and you're like, how is this even a Star Wars show? Like, how is this good? But like, it's just good storytelling.
And I think
And
what
if
helps,
you do a good job of that, you can save a crap ton on budget too, because they probably, I don't know what the Andor budget
yeah, I
is,
don't
but
know.
like they didn't do a whole lot of, they didn't do lightsaber stuff. They didn't do fight choreography. There's probably a lot of costs that you can save by doing a show like that. So I don't know. There's ways to do it, and they aren't finding those ways.
And with a show like that, it stayed true to the world it was in. So maybe that's, I mean, maybe that's what's a little easier with a show like that is like, hey, there's strict parameters versus this show is taken before the prequels, like 100 years or whatever it was.
Yeah.
So it's like really they're in an area of creative writing where it's like, well, you know, we just have to like we can't. There's some things we can't touch on because we got to get to there.
Right.
But like that's why it's like I want another series to see how they deal with it now that you talk to Yoda, because we get in episode 1 where it's, you know, like the whole mystery, like, oh, the Sith have never, you know, been existed and they're, you know, they've been gone for a millennia, blah blah blah. Versus like clearly they existed. Clearly Yoda's gonna probably find out.
Right.
But then he just keeps it a secret instead of like, hey, we should prepare for them to show themselves.
Yeah. Well, okay, so Zane and I actually mentioned in a previous episode. So like, you know how Kamir is like trying to like recruit May/Osha as his acolyte, or
and he says the power of 2. So
whatever.
Like someone's told him
power
about
of 2.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's exactly what we said, is like, okay, the power of 2. So that's like established at this point. And Yoda somehow knows about that in episode, I think it's 2. He's like, oh, or no, at the end of 1, maybe it is. Always 2 there are.
Yeah.
And like, how would the Jedi know about that unless the Sith had been present and established, right?
Unless there's ancient texts of the Jedi that talks about that, because the Power of 2 comes about when, is it Revan? Is Revan when the Power of 2 starts being a thing?
Zane said it was Darth Bane, and I have zero clue where that sits on the timeline.
Hang on, I Google that quick because I think Darth Bane's before Revan, I believe. Let me look it up really quick.
Yeah, that would make sense though, because they could be still like recorded in history at that point if that were the case. But yeah, I don't know, man. And we get a very short and seemingly random glimpse of Darth Pelagius.
When did we get that?
It was when Kumir and Osha were leaving that planet. He just pops out of a cave and looks at them as they're leaving, and that's it. Did you not see that?
Did I blink?
You missed that?
Was it that quick? If I would have blinked?
It was literally a 1.5 second clip.
Well, I missed that. So Darth Pelagius does show up.
Okay. Okay. Yes, it is. It's not. He literally, all he does is look out from a cave and smile, and that's it. So you don't get confirmation that it's Darth Pelagius, but it's Darth Pelagius.
I'll take it. I'll take that. You know what? That makes it a little. Now I will go rewatch it to find
excited about that, but at the same time, like, why did you even?
All right.
Why did you even show that? Like, it didn't make any sense in the context of the show. It just.
But hey, that's what
obviously
in one of the episodes I talked about that. It's like we better get Darth Pelagius at some point because like he's got to be the master to him.
Right, he's got to be the master, and it makes sense that he's like that part of it. That's fine. I don't mind that. It's just funny that they were like, "Hey, let's just show that he's here," and that's it. Like they didn't explain anything. They're just like, "Boom, he's there." That's it. Like, happy that I saw it, but at the same time, like, what are we doing here? Why did we need that little 1 second shot?
So in here it says Revan, and then 1,000 generations, then Darth Bane came. So that's wow. I forget what the 1,000 generations, if that's
Revan's that far ago? Dang, I
so
did
like
not.
in the timeline, it'd be 100 generations Darth Bane, then there's 3, and then 1,000 years, and then we get Darth Tenebros, who's before Darth Plagueis.
Wow.
So
Jeez, I forget how long the timeline is when you're getting to the Old Republic. That's wild.
Yeah, and that's another thing. It's like, why didn't like? I hope they have it somewhere in their pipeline. It's like, just tell the Revan story. That's what's like amazing.
Oh yeah, that would be sweet.
Yeah,
I was just chatting with somebody at work. I was like, it would be sweet if we got a Knights of the Old Republic parallel story with, Revan involved somehow. Like, not the same story as Knights of the Republic or the second one, but a story at the same time, parallel with the same events of all of that stuff happening. Like, that would be really cool.
you just made me think of, just brought me back to Shadows of the Empire. Like, that's
Ooh,
like the literally like parallel,
yeah.
like the episodes would be
Mhm.
5 and 6, like in between those, like a bridge. Like, that's would be perfect.
Mhm.
Where it's like, oh, I love Shadows of the Empire. That'd be my jam. I'd be all for that. Just like, that's the content I want, and I'm gonna love. And I do want content that's new. That's like, give us new characters.
And I think they did a decent job of bringing in new things among a timeline that exists. Like, we get the High Republic, we get things like random things like Cortosis, like that's been in Legends material. Like, I like that they're bringing in stuff like that. But what it comes down to is the story. Like, if you can't tell a good story, it's just not going to be a good Star Wars show, or a show in general, not even Star Wars show.
And I do appreciate and like the yellow lightsabers we got to see the Jedi have, because I'm all about the yellow lightsaber and the different colors. But how do you explain that? Like, I feel like you have to give context down the line where it's like, why is there only one purple and then everyone's just yellow or green and blue?
Green and blue, yeah.
But
yeah.
Oh well.
Yeah, wild stuff. So, what would you give the last episode, the finale of the Acolyte?
I think the fight scene alone, and now having to go back and have to watch Darth Plagueis in it.
I can't believe you missed that, dude.
Like, literally, if it was quick enough where if I would have just like looked away, and I'm, like,
legitimately, it was very quick. So,
and, like, I was just laying on the couch watching, and maybe I might have grabbed my phone.
You looked at your phone or something for a second,
but
coughed, sneezed, yep.
But even like Kelly didn't say anything, so she must have missed it too, because she would have been like, "Who's that?
Who the heck is that?" Go watch it on
I'll give
YouTube or Disney Plus. Just rewatch the episode.
I'll actually give it a 4.5 out of 6.
Okay,
I think there were some bits like storyline or like dialogue that I thought was kind of weak, but I think overall, like, the fight scene to me was just, that's what,
I'm in this along the same line there. Like, I think they did a good enough job of wrapping up most of their storylines, even though they didn't really do it in a super satisfying way. They still answered a lot of our questions that we had. But also, for a show that was marketed as a mini series and has not confirmed a season 2, to leave it open-ended to obviously be answered in a season 2, that's a little bit misleading to me as well. And I was not a huge fan of that. It is what it is, and we better get a season 2 at this point, because otherwise I would be upset to not hear all the answers to all those questions. But I don't know, that didn't leave a great taste in my mouth either. So,
and this is what people, the hardcore fans will get mad at, is like, well, okay, if Darth Plagueis is the master in the situation, what does he end up killing them? Like, what happens to them? Or does does Palpatine get involved later and they're older and Palpatine kills them? Because Palpatine kills Plagueis and then also gets the apprentice. So
yeah. Well, those and in the final,
I want
explained. In the final episode, they're making it seem like Osha is a very powerful like force user, right?
When
Like, and
she's
she
a
has a
Sith.
part to play. And it's like, okay, well, how does nobody in the future of the Star Wars universe know anything about her? Like
Unless we're getting a Star Wars Secret Wars. Like that's literally what could be going on, where it's like
sure.
like there's so much political like unraveling happening currently, where they're like, we need to deal with this in the shadows. And maybe that's what
Yeah.
leads to, like, the Sith infiltrating the Senate over 100 years, and then also placing like someone like Palpatine in power.
That would be interesting. Love that you're at the podcast to
and
come up with those theories with me.
I really think the skeleton, the bones of this series is good.
Yeah.
I think it needs
just
and
not well executed.
Dude, I know Marvel has to have continuity people that make sure everything just flows right, but like a show like this, like they must have a continuity person. Be like, hey, if you have this character in here, people are might be upset because supposedly they're not supposed to be alive.
And Filoni is the whatever, I don't know what his position. I think he's like the creative executive officer or whatever of like what do they call it? Lucasfilm Entertainment or whatever. So like everything goes through Filoni. Like Leslie Headland had to get everything in the Acolyte approved by Filoni.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I'm like, I mean, there has to be a plan for everything in the show. So I don't know, man.
Is this the Captain Marvel of the Star Wars Disney Plus shows?
Oof. Yes, honestly, to me, that's a good comparison, because we'll get to it when we get to our overall ratings. But I'm going along with you. I'm saying finale was a 4.5 out of 6. I thought it was solid enough. It wasn't like a knock it out of the park finale that elevated the show at all, but it was a fine enough episode to wrap up some of the questions that we had. So all right, so total season, what would you rate the whole season of the Acolyte, Mark?
I would give it a 3 out of 6.
Wow.
I know I gave some episodes pretty poor ratings, which I feel strong about. I also gave some episodes really high ratings. I think the season could have done, the show could have done a lot better. I think it could have been, I would go back to I would hope they have a Star Wars continuity person at least get some insight to be like, hey, this is what people might think, this is what actually is in the lore, what have you. Overall, at the end of the day, this episode 8 ended, and I'm like, I want more. That might just be the Star Wars fan in me. It might be like, hey, there's a lot of loose ends that I just, as a completionist with shows, I need fixed and talked about. But as of right now, I will give it a 3 out of 6, the whole series. And I don't think a rewatch will possibly change that rating up or down. But at the end of the day, I would still say, hey, go watch this and form your own opinion. So.
I feel like most things you would say that about, though, unless it's like completely awful. Like,
oh yeah, like don't watch Jaws
0
4. That's garbage.
Don't watch Jaws 4.
Yeah, okay. I'll tell you not to watch stuff, but like this is the show where like, I want you to watch stuff and then have an opinion on it. Like, then we can have that conversation. Yeah. And especially when it comes to Star Wars, I mean, this could have been dog trash and could have been. And honestly, I did say that about some stuff in the group about the show, but at the end of the day, even if I rated it 1 out of 6, I would be like, hey, go watch it and tell me if I'm wrong.
Right.
That would be my opinion. So
I would say that on the Infinity Bros podcast, I'm probably one of the guys that rates things higher on the higher end. I'm going to give the Acolyte a 3.5 out of 6. The fact that it's so low is pretty big deal. And I don't think my rating is so much indicative of what a good or bad show it is. It's more so my disappointment in the show. And I'd liken it honestly a lot to Secret Invasion on the Marvel side, of where we had these expectations coming into the show of how, and Secret Invasion, it's in its own category because, man, they fumbled that property that they could have done so much more with. The Acolyte, we had a lot of expectations, but we didn't really know exactly what the show was going to be about. Like, we didn't know a lot of things about the Acolyte coming into
lore to go off of it. So that's where it's
exactly. So they can make their own story.
Yeah.
But overall, I feel the same way where I consumed it. It's not that bad of a show. I was just personally really disappointed in the ending and the whole series as a whole. 3.5 is on my borderline for like, would I watch this show again? If I had a good reason to, I would. But I'm not going to just willy-nilly turn on, episodes to watch throughout the day like I do with like Clone Wars or, what not other Star Wars shows.
Hey, after we're done here, I'm going to go back and find that C in the...
Well, you better. Yeah, you'll have to watch that. But yeah, and anyways, some lower ratings of this one, but I think Mark and I are pretty I think we're pretty even rating of where we stand on the Infinity Bros as well. I think Zane is about where we're at. Jared apparently hasn't even finished it yet, so we'll see what he thinks when he gets done with it. But yeah, I think slightly disappointing show. Had some great moments, even I would say, with a lot of other Star Wars properties. Some great moments. Just didn't really live up to the hype that we were kind of expecting when this show dropped initially. So there you go. But tell us what you guys think. You can email us at infinitybrospodcast@gmail.com. Hit us up on social media. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, or Threads. What else we got, Mark? YouTube, Twitch.
Are we on Mastodon still? We still on that?
Mastodon, Blue Sky,
Podbean.
Podbean.
Send us a postcard at
OnlyFans.
Yeah. Gosh. Can you imagine?
I can't imagine.
We'd make so much money.
Come and check us out. Thank you so much for joining me, Mark. It has been a pleasure to talk Star Wars with you.
As always, I'm all about anything nerdy I will talk about and give you my opinion whether you want it or not.
That's what we're about here on the Infinity Bros podcast. Force feeding our opinion into your ears, whether you like it or not.
I'm not telling you have to believe it, but I'm going to tell you.
Thank you, listener, wherever you're listening, however you're listening. Thank you so much for making us a part of your podcast experience. We love you 3000. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Infinity Bros podcast. You can find the Infinity Bros on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Twitch, and YouTube at the Infinity Bros. Hey, you can also check out our website at theinfinitybros.com for links, reviews, and that sweet merch. Feel free to send listener feedback via social media or email us at infinitybrospodcast@gmail.com.